This'll completely blow your mind. A couple of weeks ago, Eddie Bravo was on Joe Rogan's podcast and he went completely wild about the Shroud of Turin. Since its discovery, the Shroud of Turin has been the subject of intense controversy within and outside church circles. Some people believe it's proof of Jesus. Others have branded it a lie, and Eddie Bravo used to be part of that camp. I say used to because going by what you're about to see, it looks like he's jumped ship. Before we get into it, don't forget to hit subscribe and the notification button for more videos like this. Let's get this show on the road.
He brought up the Shroud of Turin.
Yeah.
And I always thought that was fake. Because like in the 80s.
What is that, Eddie?
The shroud, it's like the cloth that Jesus was buried in and left an image of him.
Uh-huh.
And in the 80s, like 1988, they did carbon dating on it. And they go, oh, it's fake. I never looked into it. I just figured it was fake. But listening to you and Mel Gibson talk about it, I'm like,
it's
what?
real?
Is there a...
Well, apparently it's a lot older than they assumed when they did the first testing. And one of the problems is
Holy
that there's
shit.
cross-contamination. There's also been repairs to it. But they did subsequent testing, and they found that it was like 2,000 plus years old.
Yeah, and the one thing,
It's in
it's
the
the
range.
it's the most studied artifact ever.
Damn.
Like particle physicists, nuclear engineers, they all studied it, and some of them, some believe in it, some don't believe in it, but they all agree on one thing: no one knows how they did it.
Right.
There's
No one knows how they
paint,
made it. It's
There's
not
no
paint.
paint. There's no
Yeah.
dye. So, dude, all this week, dude, all day, I'm just watching documentary after podcast on this shit, and it's mind blowing. There's a nuclear
Well, that'll be
engineer.
the most fun.
There's a nuclear engineer. You can go on YouTube. His name is Robert Rucker. Watch his breakdown. This guy's a nuclear dude. He's breaking down the it's insane because it's a negative image on a non-photographic material. It's
Right.
linen.
Right.
And then it turns out, like if you look at it with the naked eye, it's white, and then you see the image of the face is kind of like yellow. You can barely see it. But in like 1898, some photographer took a picture of it and then looked at the negative, and then all of a sudden in the negative, the whole body appears, front and back, because he was buried like with
You see the images, Jamie?
he was buried with the sheet under him.
You can say whatever you want about Eddie Bravo's conclusion on the Shroud of Turin. What you're not going to say is that it's ill-informed. These days, people are way too comfortable blindly repeating other people's opinions, and the outcome is far from pleasant. Even in religion, having no personal conviction of your own often turns out to be a setup for disappointments. Before we can say something is a lie, we should at least try to do our own research and be sure our conclusion is ours. Hats off to Eddie Bravo for finally deciding to do some personal finding of his own, and a lot of good that did him. There's no doubt that a lot of people still think that the entire thing is a hoax. I mean, just because Eddie Bravo changed his mind doesn't mean it's all true all of a sudden. Whichever way you're inclined, I think the difference between those who believe and those who don't is information and research. Because when you've done your research and you begin to process the information available, you begin to see things differently by a large margin. Here's a little bit of what I mean.
If you haven't got time to watch this video, I think the evidence for this being the actual burial shroud of Jesus Christ himself is quite convincing. But, of course, I don't tell you what to think. You'll have to look at it for yourself. Why don't more people know about this? Well, John Calvin here, he was a Protestant theologian of the past, and he wrote this book saying that the relics were, the shroud particularly, was a forgery, and he was quite influential in the Protestant world. And the secular world isn't particularly interested in it. So while this has got some traction in the Catholic world, very little traction in the Protestant world, which is a great pity. We don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. Yes, a lot of these relics, so-called, were just a part of a medieval racket. Of course, it was a making money thing, like selling indulgences. But there does seem to be some genuine relics as well. And the shroud seems to be one of those. Now,
this is exactly what I meant when I talked about people simply passing on other people's opinions. John Calvin, clearly a man of importance in the theologian circle, gave his opinion of what he thought about the Shroud of Turin, and everybody just bought it because of his religious influence and his social standing. To be fair though, we've got to consider the level of technology at the time. None of it was advanced enough to produce the kind of information we have about the shroud now. And there was also the notoriety of the church. Between these two factors, I can see how people would be lazy about finding things out for themselves. But I mean, what about now? Recent advanced technology and scientific experiments have uncovered a lot about the shroud. So why do these people still doubt? Consider these pieces of evidence for yourself, and you might see why Eddie Bravo was beside himself with excitement.
This is taken from the 1978 exploration scientific investigation. And this is from the photographer Vernon Miller, available on shroudphotos.com. And this is what you actually see on the shroud, and it's a photo negative. So already I think we can probably see the head, the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the moustache, the beard, marks, blood stains. These are being confirmed to be human blood on various parts from what would be we would assume to be the crown of thorns. The scourge marks that are on many parts of the body. And this is what we actually see when you look at the shroud itself. But it turns out that this is a photo negative on an original linen cloth. But the point is, linen is not a photosensitive material, and it's a negative. And of course, it's centuries before photography was developed. Photography only starts, I don't know, about 1830s or something like that. Way before that. And yet we have this photographic negative here on the shroud. Now, it wasn't known, of course, this was a negative until photography was developed. So when photography was developed, the first guy to photograph this as a positive was Seconde Pierre, French photographer, 1898. And he saw that this was, so he took a picture of the negative, and then it became a positive, and he was the first person to see it as a positive. And you can see a lot more features in the positive light. So we have this mystery already of how do we get this photo negative image on a shroud centuries before photography was even thought about. And the image is on a non-photographic sensitive material. Now, not only is there an image on the shroud, the image is actually codes, three-dimensional information. Now, in other words, the grayscale on the image contains three-dimensional information. Now, if you take a picture of yourself and put it under what's called a 3D image analyzer, it'll just be a complete mess. But when you do that with a shroud, it comes to life. And this was first done again in 1978.
If you think of the church and Jesus as one big conspiracy, you're probably going to think nothing of this clip. But then that does just say more about you than it does about Jesus or any other person, because it says you're unwilling to learn or analyze facts and follow the trail to a conclusion. However, if you can take the chance to be a little more open-minded and do your own research, here's what you should consider. The most intriguing thing about the Shroud of Turin isn't the fact that science can confirm it's real. It's the fact that science confirms that it shouldn't even exist. Linen shrouds aren't photographic material, so the question becomes, how on earth did it get here? This is an impossible imprint of a crucified man with wounds resembling Jesus' injuries as described in the Bible. Now you've got to ask yourself, who was crucified and at the same time known for doing the impossible? Coming up with an answer shouldn't be so difficult. After all, if it walks like a duck and talks like a duck, it's a duck, right?
From the image on the shroud, we see that the man of the shroud has a broken nose, a swollen face. Part of the beard has been plucked out, tearing wounds produced by the scourging. Wounds from the crown of thorns, bruises on the shoulder, which we believe, if this is indeed Jesus of Nazareth, from carrying the weight of a cross, again it's consistent. Knee injuries from repeated falls, nail wounds from Roman crucifixion, and an oval wound between the fifth and the sixth rib on the right hand side. And again, these are the wounds that have been known about from the sufferings of Christ himself. Let's just look at these briefly. So if we take those features there that have been completely demonstrated from the shroud, the broken nose, swollen face. So example, Matthew says they spat on him, they took the staff and struck him on the head again and again. So clear evidence of a head trauma in the ancient New Testament scriptures. Part of the beard plucked out is not mentioned in the New Testament, but it is a prophecy in Isaiah. So we're kind of seeing this long-term historical consistency. Part of the beard pulled out there from the prophecy in Isaiah. Tearing wounds produced by the scourging. This is Pilate had Jesus flogged, so we know that the scourging took place in the gospel accounts. Crown of thorns is clearly attested to again in several scriptures. Bruises on the shoulder. John's gospel says Jesus carried his own cross to begin with, went to the place of the skull, which in Aramaic is called Golgotha. So he started off carrying the cross, or probably the cross member of the cross rather than the whole cross. And the bruises on the shoulder are there as he would struggle with the weight of that large wooden beam. The injuries have been clearly identified again by the surgeons and pathologists who've examined the image on the shroud. Knee injuries from repeated falls. The Gospels don't talk about this directly, but they do say that so Jesus looked like he started carrying the cross himself, and then someone else carried it for him. A man called Simon of Cyrene had to carry it for him, presumably because of the repeated falls. Although that's putting two and two together, it probably does make four though. So help in carrying the cross. Wounds on the right side. When they came to Jesus and found that he was already dead, they didn't break his legs. So
at this point, I've just got to let this out. If you make the choice to be on the other side of the truth, that's on you. I can't tell you what to believe about the Shroud of Turin or who's in it. But the Shroud of Turin speaks for itself, and the supporting evidence is simply overwhelming. Not that I needed it to believe Jesus is real, but wow. And this is why I think that the discovery of the Shroud is more than just an I told you so moment. In a world constantly doing its best to fall short of God's glory, I can't help but see it as an extension of God's hand to those who doubt Jesus. Like he's inviting them to take a breather, look at the evidence, and give him a chance to be the Lord over their lives. But I mean, that's what I think. What do you think? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments section. If you found this video interesting, you'd be doing someone a favor by sharing it with them. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you in the next one.